Cam, welcome to Beers with Bill.
Thanks.
Totally appreciate you joining us this evening. And I left it up to you. I don't even remember which one we were going to start with.
Pick one when we get to the end, we'll stop. Thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone and then hang out. Beer-wise, sorry, that I realized where you're going with that. I have a question. Beer-wise, I think we're going to start with Borrowed Time. Of the four that we have for us today, so everyone who's following along, that'd be probably the number one. First place to start.
Rustic Saison.
Rustic Saison, yes.
I'll be more prepared next time. I was a bit late, coming to this, so next time I'll be prepared.
We forgive you, Katie.
Thank you.
All these beers here are still available if you want to get them. They're at a later date and enjoy them on your own time. Please do. Don't feel beholden to follow along today by any means.
I have some of them, just not all. That's all.
Best beer you can have is the one in your glass. So.
I guessed wrong. I thought you'd start with the session, so I got a second one.
Oh, we'll get there. Hey, you don't have to drink them in order. You don't have to follow along at all either. It's all good. Okay, so Borrowed Time is a beer we've kind of making for about a year and a half now. About 2 years ago, Matt, who was one of our longtime employees, kind of took over all the brewing here, or directing all the brewing here. And he has a minor obsession with Belgium and all things Belgian, and so he wanted to make it a more like historical saison. So this guy has, so we have another like hibiscus saison product that was kind of more like in keeping with the way like the way kind of we've approached beer previously or earlier, I would say, and then we want to try interesting spins on things so that was kind of where a lot of our earlier brands came from, kind of innovative yet approachable. So something that you're going to recognize what it is, but we've kind of tinkered with a little bit. But Matty wanted to make an actual more traditional style saison, so we did that with Borrowed Time. We call it a rustic saison because it's got a lot of kind of non-traditional grains in it. There's some buckwheat, there's some spelt, there's oats, barley, and rye. So it gives it a little more depth of grain flavor, I find, in it. But it's nice and easy, hot weather beer. I find it drinks really crisply and really easily. You're gonna get that kind of saison phenolicness to it, but you get a little bit of that spice from the rye coming through as well. And again, I think you're gonna find a little bit more depth of flavor from the various different malts in it. Anyway, do you want to what else would you like with each beer in terms of description?
That's perfect. You even answered my question. I was going to ask if there was buckwheat in it because that was like the first thing that hit me.
Yep, there's a little bit. Yep.
And
yeah, so we've been trying to make this one. We've been putting this out in short cans, just kind of give people something that's nice and easy and crisp and quick beer. Different, a little slightly more in depth lawnmower beer. It's kind of the lawnmower beer for beer nerds.
Well,
one with this one.
For saison style, it definitely has a lot more complexity to it.
Yeah, we obviously generally with a saison, you're going to have the impacts from some of those other adjunct or non-traditional malts. I would say not mostly You're looking at barley and wheat, but you're going to get a lot of flavor impact from that. And then the yeast. Generally, in most Belgian beer, it's the yeast that does the talking in the beer, and you're going to get that definite that phenolic kind of bite. But it's also kind of refreshing. It's cleansing. I find with that addition of that the flavor from the yeast. I mean, saisons traditionally, like the goal with this is that it was the beer you fed the farmhands. So it was whatever was left went into the saison, and you gave it out for the farmhands for nourishment. So that's that characteristic. So there isn't really this is what a saison is. It's generally a loose affiliation or a collection of various different flavors and things that were kind of lying around. Yeah, I quite like this beer. I think Matt did a really, really good job with it. And yeah, I drink a fair bit of this just kind of on a hot day to cool off.
Well, I can see why. That citrus back tone. It's absolutely perfect on a hot summer day.
Thanks.
So I want to say I love the bio you wrote. Absolutely loved it. It made sense after I read one of your interviews. But I want to ask, did it miss anything important?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess the reading between the lines of it is we try to not take ourselves too terribly seriously here. I mean, we take what we do very seriously, but we try to keep our, try to keep things taken kind of. We just try to have fun with what we do. And I think as a brewery, we have generally try to have a little bit more of a playful kind of fourth wall kind of thing, but just, the gym camera kind of thing, right? The gym look from The Office kind of thing, where we just like to try not to overemphasize the importance of what we do, basically. We take, I don't know if that's making sense, or I'm being terribly clear with that, but we generally try to have a very good time with what we do. And be able to laugh at themselves.
You take what you do very seriously. That it shows in how rapidly you've grown, all the things that you guys have been doing, the community that you've built around. But I get from even looking at your website that you're here to have fun and make beer totally approachable for people.
Yeah, and that's kind of the main goal. We try to be innovative yet approachable. Yep. With the buzzwords on the labels too. So it's stuff people are going to recognize, but stuff that's compelling and interesting. People are going to want to drink as well.
Yeah. I have to say, after I looked at your website and I read Meet the Crew, I felt like the new boyfriend meeting the family for the first time. And I don't mean that in any other than like a warm, tingly feeling way, because after I finished reading it, I went away feeling like, wow, you're just part of the family now. Whose idea was it to do it that way?
Yeah, Avery Marin takes care of all of our our marketing and all of our social kind of stuff. So yeah, she put that together for our website. She generally she runs all of our social media and plans kind of all of our outward facing stuff. So yeah, that was definitely her little tick, but I really enjoyed that as well. I like having that up there. I think it's part of what we're trying to do with the brewery in general is to really emphasize our role in the community that we are a part of, and how we can support that community, and how the impact that we can have on it. And I think part of that comes down to familiarity and just knowing who the people are that are involved, and who the people that are making what's you're drinking, and hopefully enjoying. So yeah, that's just kind of a big piece of what we are as a company. I think is just that openness, that familiarity. When you come into our place, we're totally open all the way to the back. You can walk down and see what everyone's doing, as long as there's no chemical flying around or anything. But like, we have an open house. We kind of want people to be as involved in that as they want to be. And so yeah, having the introductions and getting everyone to kind of know who we are is a big piece of that, I think.
So after
what
hearing
you met the parents, just out of curiosity, was it some beer? That'd be...
No, I'm just curious if you've ever handed anybody a rag and asked them to wipe the beer off the floor.
You usually pay them first, but yeah.
So, 2015, you did this wonderful interview with The Bookshelf.
Okay.
Which also really helped me understand the way you wrote the bio.
Okay.
But you make mention of brewing at Great Lakes Brewing with Mike Lackey. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, I would credit or discredit, I don't know, one or the other. Lackey taught me how to brew. And if anyone's ever met Lackey, that pretty much involves, there's the mash tun, there's the grain, you can't break it. Lackey's a pretty laid back dude. But yeah, Great Lakes was a really kind of awesome spot back then. It was kind of like an incubator for a lot of folks like myself that worked there over the various kind of period between about 2008 and 2011, 12, or even later. But yeah, that was the first place that I had ever actually physically made my own beer, other than like a brew your own shop when we were undergrads way back when. but like from scratch, like a full all mash or all grain, full mash beer. And yeah, that was kind of a really cool thing. Getting to do that there, and at that time too. Obviously, Great Lakes moved on to some, or not moved on. They created some incredibly good beer and an incredibly good name right about that period. So it was a really cool time to be a part of that. Something that was just right about to emerge and explode as they did. Yeah, and it was kind of like an incubator, I think, for a lot of folks like myself. Rob from Shortfinger being one, Andrew Bartle being another one. That we all kind of came through there right about the same time. Because I think we all had each other's jobs. If we've been talking, I got Bartle's job and Rob got mine, so I think it all kind of worked through that way. But yeah, it was a very cool time and place to be, for sure.
It was an exciting time. At Great Lake was doing some phenomenal things. They started that Tank 10 program.
Yeah.
And I love what you're pointing out, like a brewery incubator, because there were so many people that worked at Great Lakes and then went on.
Yeah.
To do.
Yeah, it was called Project X when I was there, before it was Tank 10. But they hadn't quite got them land on that name when I was there. But I mean, when I was there, I was not a brewer. I was the delivery dude. So, you know, it was I just get to brew after my shift was done, or if the pilot system was available and there was someone to hold my hand while I did it. So, you know, that was certainly not my role there, but it was definitely the first place that I had that experience.
So when would it have been, or at what point would it have been you decided you and there it is, I've got it further down, Russ, decided to go full tilt into a brewery?
It's a good question. I think probably in around about after I kind of I was at Great Lakes, so I wasn't there for a terribly long period of time. We were living in Toronto. My wife, not wife at the time, but wife and I were in Toronto at the time, and we just decided to move back to Guelph. And I guess it was when I came back to Guelph. Russ was out here already, and yeah, we were just kind of brewing on the weekends, like just about every weekend, and then it started a couple of times a week, and then it was just like, yeah, well, why don't we just try this for real? So it would have been probably about 2012 that we just decided, yeah, screw it, let's give it a shot. Let's do this for real. And then it went pretty quick from there. I mean, we got the door opened in I guess early 2014, but we had our space. We were building the brewery out as of about 2013. So yeah, we hit the ground running pretty fast, I would say. But yeah, it probably came around from sometime in probably early 2012. Where we're just like, you know what, let's do it. So yeah, that was it.
That's great. Now, David, has he answered your question fully, or do you want to expand on that?
No, I think it makes sense. I guess I sort of understand the what, but I guess is it literally just entirely happenstance that so many from Great Lakes at one period of time went on to kind of like branch out into, like, their web seemed to be everywhere from this little era? Like, is it entirely accidental, or was there something, like, were they either promoting a program that was sort of doing that? Like, was it accidental or intentional?
I don't know that it was intentional, at least not in my case when I was there. I just think it was a good place to be, and I think you had attracted a lot of very passionate and very interested people who ultimately kind of just you know, got infected with the beer bug. And at least I'm speaking for myself. There was a lot of passion in that building when I was there. There was a lot of people that really, really were into what they were doing, and that's kind of infectious. And I think that a lot of people kind of moved through and went through there and went ahead and kept that with them. And then after they left, they're like, yeah, you know what, I want to try this too. So I really think that was that time and place in that spot in particular was had that effect on a lot of people. Like it was a hub, it was a nexus, right? The stuff that was coming out of there at that point in time was unique in the province. I think the stuff they were kind of doing was really engaged a lot of people. So, but whether there was an actual program, it wasn't an overt one. Maybe Peter had something secret under his desk. I don't know, but I don't, not to the best of my knowledge, was it something that they sought? I think they just sought people who gave a shit about beer, and they found a lot of them. I don't know if that satisfies or not, but I think that's kind of what the way it was.
No, it does. It's just very interesting, I guess. It'd be, I'd love to dive into that more someday, but that might just be a pet project I do at some point.
Putting a little Venn diagram together of all the guys that came through Great Lakes. Yeah, or the breweries that time there. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that happened in my master's, where it was about a certain sector of a business sector, and in a particular city there was one like really big business, and somebody actually went and drew the family tree essentially of all the different like little children companies that and spin-offs that came out of it. And so something like that maybe for this would be really interesting.
It'd be really cool. It'd be a cool thing to put up on like one of the Ontario beer memes or whatever. It's like where it all came from, who all has ties to Great Lakes.
Yeah.
So there were a number of things that were happening at Great Lakes 2005 timeframe, and this is sort of the extension of it, because 2005 is when they really turned Mike loose.
Yeah.
They took the reins off him and said, just go do it. And he was instrumental in starting that first home brew club. And I'm sure if you take a look at that, a lot of the passionate people who came into Great Lakes in the next 8 years, there's a good portion of those that came out of that home brew club that he started.
Yeah.
Because it really got that passion going with them. Because when you talk to Rob, you hear it in him as well. So, and then, Nickelbrook takes off, because I forget which gentleman it was, but he leaves Great Lakes, he goes to Nickelbrook, and it's like, hey guys, you should try this stuff. And they let him go. And then that's when they started to take off.
Yeah. I was at, before I worked at Great Lakes, I was at Barbolo for a while, back at their Wellesley location or Dundonald location, before the OG one. And I remember Nickelbrook being on draft there quite a bit. And they were still making the green apple beer, and they hadn't really got to where they went to, or obviously where they are today. Or the styles or the type of beer was very different then. But yeah, definitely an interesting collection that came through there for sure.
Oh, it definitely was. And just giving me an idea of something I'm going to have to pursue a little bit more. That's for sure on that one. You describe yourself as a beer nerd.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that.
All right. How in terms of like semantics and like what is a beer nerd or why?
Well, I'll go right back to my basic first question. What makes you a beer nerd?
All right.
What makes you a beer nerd?
Interest bordering on obsession. How's that? I think just as a definition for nerds in general, I would say it's an interest that goes deeper than interest. I think for me, it's just kind of that the kind of like the further in you go, the bigger it gets, kind of thing. In that every time I take another step further toward beer, there's two more steps I want to take. There's more stuff I want to learn. There's more stuff that surprises me. I think having that kind of interest and that kind of desire to kind of go deeper and go more and go more and go more is what would define a nerd to me, I guess. And that I do that for beer. So that kind of, I guess that's how my beer nerdery would manifest, is that I just find the stuff incredibly interesting, and I really like learning more about it and having more of it in my life. I don't really know how I could have more of it in my life right now. My life is pretty much entirely beer right now, but I guess that would be it. Is that it's interest bordering on obsession.
Apt description. I love it. I absolutely love it. So then I'm going to skip a bunch of questions and go to the one early 2000.
All right.
You talk about going to the CL in Montreal.
Yeah.
What changed for you in that visit?
You know what? Going to DIA was kind of, it was one of those places I'd always heard a lot about. You gotta go to DIA, you gotta go to DIA, you gotta go to DIA. All right, I'm gonna go to DIA. Seeing I'm trying to think, like, going in there the first time, it was kind of like, you have 30 beers on? I'm sorry, what? There's 30 beers? And like, this is like early 2000s. And we didn't have these beer bars with like, 75 lines right now, right? But there was like a stupid amount of draft they had on, and they were all unique. And you're sitting there going like, this is the real deal. And the other things we're going to talk about was the when I did the first time I had a Rauch beer was at a class I kind of took at the U of G here to be a little treat to myself, was beverage management too. I wasn't in the hotel and food program. I just heard about this and thought it was really cool. So I got into it, and we had a Rauch beer one day at the Schlenker the Rauch, which is a kind of iconic Rauch beer. And I remember at the time thinking, I'm a beer connoisseur. This is, I would have been like 2021 when I did this. I'm thinking, oh yes, I was a beer connoisseur. And then I had this, I drink Rickards. And then I had this, and I was like, holy crap, I didn't know beer could do this. Like, I didn't know this was something you could do. This is amazing. And then the visit to Dia followed pretty shortly after that. And just, again, having that idea of, holy, this is what we can do with beer. And I think that's kind of one of the kind of following on with the nerdery here. I think that board at Dia and the wide variety of selections and flavors they had at the time there was really an example of one of the things I really love about beer. And you talk about people, you talk about connoisseurs, and generally everyone talks about wine and how good wine is and matches with so many different things, and that's all true. But with wine, you get one ingredient to work with. You get varieties and manipulations of one ingredient. It's just a grape. But with beer, we get so much more stuff that we can play with, and so many more variables that we can work within. And seeing that there, you just the base ingredients. You can manipulate your water, you can manipulate your yeast, you can manipulate your malt, you can manipulate your hops. You have so much different stuff to choose and room to kind of maneuver within those 4 ingredients alone. And then all the other things that we can add to beer and still have it be beer. Whereas, just the incredibly wide range that this is amazing to me, and I really love it. But I think it is just the idea there that hey, this is all that we can do with this, and these are the various different holes we can put these pegs in. Again, it's that idea. Wow, beer can do this. This is still beer. You can really. It's a great outlet for creativity. I guess that's the outlet, the impact of going there and seeing that is that all of these different things can still be this.
Just the passion there. I see the nerd coming through. I love it. I absolutely love it. So Jen was asking us what the next beer was. That's why I was holding up the smoked honey.
Awesome. Yeah, we can definitely move on to smoked honey.
So
we put this one on there just because this beer has been with us. One, it's readily available across the LCBOs, and 2, this beer has been with us the longest. So this beer was the first beer we made commercially, the first kind of recipe we developed commercially, there's very few things we did in the early days that still kind of kick around, but smoked honey is one of them. And when we first started the brewery, why I like this beer, because I think it's a good segue into the things that we kind of did wrong early on. When we first started this beer, we chose this beer to be our flagship beer, which might have been a little mistaken. Smoked brown ale's not, believe it or not the biggest selling beer in the province of Ontario. But we wanted to do something a little different. And, kind of as I was saying, one of the things that we did wrong is, at the time we were saying, all right, well, what beer can we make? We make lager. Lager's really hard to make, and we don't really know what we're doing yet. So we'll put a pause on the lager. We can make IPA. Everybody makes IPA. Let's skip IPA. Let's make something else. And so we landed with smoked honey. Ultimately, we were incredibly wrong. We should have been making IPA because that's what people want to drink. Lager is what people want to drink. But ultimately, with the smoked honey, we landed with this. And the thing that I really like about this beer is that it's really versatile. I see a couple of comments poking up there with the smoked meats, and this beer pairs incredibly well with all kinds of different foods. Kind of going back to my comment there about all the different things you can do with beer, and why I was picking on wine is that there's so many different pairings and food flavor profiles that both contrast and compare with beer, and so many cool combinations you can make with all the different tools you have at your disposal in beer. And I find this compares particularly well with a lot of those with a lot of different foods. Sorry. Barbecue goes fantastic with barbecue. Goes really well with cheese. One of the food pairings we used to do pre-COVID was with the Taste of Craft with Jen in Guelph here. And one of the things she would do is she'd pick like a sharp cheddar, and she'd pour honey on the cheddar, and you'd eat the cheddar with the honey on it, and you'd try the beer before and after, and it's completely different. And then the honey just explodes out of the beer when you have had it on your palate really recently. Very interesting effect. It kind of like blew my mind the first time I had that happen. We ferment the honey out, so the honey is added in the kettle, so it actually does ferment completely out. It's one of the reasons we get to be 5.5% and still drink fairly light-bodied. It's a medium to light-bodied beer. I'd say it's not a terribly heavy beer. Excuse me, but the honey isn't really overpowering on the palate when you first drink it, but it is definitely there. And if you kind of taste that little, you can kind of, if you think about it, you can taste it in the back of your tongue there as it goes down. But this beer has had many different iterations over its life form. Or its lifetime. We kind of always like to tinker with everything that we do, just to try and make things better. And so this beer has evolved quite a bit since we started 6 years ago. But I'm pretty happy with where it is right now. I do enjoy drinking it. Again, I find it's not something you're going to drink, all night. But I find as a first beer of the night or something to match with your dinner, I think it goes really, really well. Any questions or interest about that at all?
Someone wants to know what kind of honey you're using. Cream, liquid, does it matter?
It's liquid honey. It's wildflower honey. It comes from Tuckamore Bee Company, which is just down Highway 6. So it's all local bees, local honey. We get it in, we put about 15 kilograms into a batch. So there's quite a bit of it in there. But it's liquid when we get it. Yeah.
I'm going to say you've given an apt description, because the first thing I want to say, I like this beer. You should have come and talked to me. I would have told you I'm the sliver of a market for beer.
The market, it's definitely there. We see people that buy it really like it and get
Yep.
get it fairly frequently, but it's not a beer for everyone.
No.
And it's not a beer, again, not a beer you're going to drink all night probably, but I think it's a good one to kind of get things going and a good one to play around with different flavor profiles.
This is a beer that I would share with my friends who drink strictly lagers or easy drinking ales.
Cool.
And this is a beer that I would serve with a meal if my friends wanted to have a beer with the meal. So
Awesome.
I love the versatility of it. I don't remember when we first got it at kickoff, but I remember trying it going, oh yeah, this is definitely a fantastic beer.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I would say it's been with us a long time, and this is like one of the first real recipes we had presentable for the general public, I would say. But saying it has come a long way since that point in time. But I'm pretty happy with where it is.
Yeah. So Derek's asking, he's trying to think back to your early days. He wanted to know, what were your launch beers? Was it the smoked honey and the dry hop pale?
Yeah, it was the day we opened was, I should know this, we had Evening Stout, which was rebranded as 100 Step Stout very shortly thereafter. We had smoked honey, we had dry hop pale ale, and we had Gordon Hill Hefeweizen. Those are the first 4 or 5 beers that we opened with. Kind of so much of what we've done since then is just try new things, and whatever works, we do again. So a lot of the stuff that we kind of have around regularly now is just all kind of things that we did, people liked, so we did it again. People liked it still, so we did it again. Then just slowly started making it better and better. I think anyway. That's up for debate, but trying to make things a little bit better and a little bit more within more where we want them.
That's great. I love the fact that a lot of the craft beer guys are experimental in what they do.
Yeah,
'cause
I think a lot of us really like, I guess speaking for, again, I can only really speak for myself, but I've always been kind of like Puritan in that if I'm going to call something, it needs to be that. So if I'm making a special bitter, it needs to be a special bitter. If I'm making an APA, it needs to be that, identifiable as that. But I don't need to do that all the time. Or I can start with that and move to something else, or change it in a slightly different way. So I like saying if you're going to call it something, it should be that, but you don't need to call it something if you don't want to, right? Yep. Or if you want to play with color outside the lines a little bit.
Well, to use that analogy, what is it that gives you your inspiration to color outside the line?
That's a good question. I think it started off with just trying to figure out our feet. What's our brewery going to be? What are we going to do and what are we going to do well? And for the longest time, it was kind of figuring out what our spin on our styles are, what we can do traditionally and what we can do outside of that. It ultimately came down to is what kind of beer did I want to drink? that was a lot of what where it literally started out from. And again, I'm very partial to Rauch beer, so I wanted to drink that. Turns out not enough other people did, but that's ultimately what you get where you learn as you go along in that regard. I guess the thing to give to just trying to make new things and cool new things, like things that are. I find that beer is like this perfect blend of art and science. Going back to Nickelbrook, you have a fairly rigid scientific framework under which, if you're not within these parameters, you don't get beer. But they're actually pretty far apart, and there's a lot of room to play around and create something and innovate within that. You don't always wind up with something that turns out well, but there's a lot of room to maneuver and to be creative within that scientific framework. It's very similar to baking in that regard. If you don't have this amount of this at this temperature, it just doesn't work. And beer is pretty much the same thing. If you don't have this amount of this within this temperature at this time, you don't make beer. But I guess it's just trying to play with those variables and push them around a little bit and see and the thing I really like when we try and create new beer is one of the kind of the guiding principles we have is, all right, what do we want in the glass? What do we want that experience to be? What do we want this to taste like to the person who's drinking it? And we say, all right, this is what we got in the glass at the end of the day. How do we get that? Basically, where can we tweak, manipulate, and play around with process and all of the numerous variables across from a kernel of grain to a beer in a glass? How can we manipulate that to wind up where we want it? And it's kind of working backwards and deconstructing this and figuring, all right, so we can put this here, we can do this at this temperature, we can use this style of this and add it here to wind up where we are. And I think that's kind of how a lot of that I guess comes about. Is just we just try to say, all right, how do we manipulate these variables into creating something that we want to drink and we hope other people want to drink too.
This is what I love about this. We get the insight of that creative process inside a brewer's mind. No, I love it. I love listening to that whole, like, this is where I want to be. So we deconstruct it. We get back to that. Those are wonderful things. And this is what's great about having the interview and the conversation. Jen beat me to the question. She wants to know, besides Royal City, what is your go-to local brewery?
That's a contentious one. Go all of them. Two things. Well, with that, first off, I don't get out of my cage very much. This is my cage here. I don't get out of my cage very much. I don't get to go to other folks' houses or places anywhere near as much as I'd like to. That being said, the two kind of two places I generally go and hang out as a brewer are, one, I go to Wellington a fair bit just because they have a lot of stuff I need to borrow. And so I usually wind up having a couple of beers while I'm up there. Other places, Block 3, I generally get out there probably more than I get out to anywhere else and hang out with Kev out there. Say I don't get out there anywhere near as much as I'd like to, but you know, Block 3 started pretty much about 6 months before we did. So we kind of shared a lot of the same stories early on. But those are two places I generally like to go and hang out, and whose beer I generally like to drink. I also got a really soft spot in my heart for Sleeman Dark, because I used to steal that from my dad when I was a kid. So it's kind of hard to completely overlook that as a sentimental beer anyway. Otherwise, you know, like, I'm trying to think the best way to answer this, but to my not even great shame, it's like the Zares at our places had like Czech Vars for like $2.15 a can for like the last year. Like, I've been drinking a lot of Czech Var because like at $2.15 a can, like, I can't compete with it. No one can compete with that. It's fantastic and it's cheap. Like, should drink it. So yeah, that's been my one of my go-tos for the last little while. That's not even like shameful. It's just fantastic beer and it's dirt cheap.
That's a great answer. I go to my local Zares. Cheap beer.
But yeah, that's generally, as a rule, I generally like to drink cask ale, English ales, and German lagers. So those are my two
Yeah.
kind of
You can't beat Czech Bar.
Anywhere that's got something nice and crispy or slightly bitter is good, and then anywhere that's got some cask ale on, I really enjoy those as well. So usually I'll go to either two spots that I generally do most of my drinking are the Woolley and Baker Street in Guelph. So kind of orbit back and forth between the two of them.
To follow up on that, David was wondering, how do you compare the Tri-City craft beer scene to the Guelph craft beer scene? Or do you?
That's a tough question. Well, to be honest, I don't really know that, other than the brewers and the breweries, I don't really know what the scene's like too much over in the Tri-Cities as opposed to Guelph. Excuse me. I'm saying just I don't get out as much as I'd like to anymore. So I mean, the kind of guys that kind of started up all around the same time we did over there, it's like Innocente, Block 3, TWB. We know them pretty well. You know, Rob at Sharpfinger, obviously we know well as well. But beyond that, I don't have the whole lot of experience with getting deep into that scene over there. So I'm not the best guy to ask that, but for a comparison, I know there's a lot of very interesting breweries out there in Cambridge and through KW. But to my great shame, I haven't been to a lot of them. I had some definitely had their beer brought, that someone goes by and brings beer in for us. But I haven't had a chance to get to see a lot of those spaces. And then as far as the scene outside of the breweries, I'm not the best guy. Guelph, I would say, this is defined. It's very local proud.
Yep.
I think people in Guelph really like drinking beer from Guelph and are very happy and proud to kind of promote
Yep.
the breweries in this city. So that Guelph's had a really long-standing beer scene. You know, I mean, Wellington was the first independent brewery in Canada, or the oldest functioning one anyway. Sleeman was a couple of years behind them. So, you know, we're talking like 85 and 86, 87. We've had, like, in this city, a really big craft beer scene for a long time. You know, it's people saying like these guys blazed a trail. They kind of paved a highway for us to jump on board and drive down behind them. We didn't really have to work to convert anyone to drink craft beer, which I think a lot of guys in a lot of other cities have to deal with, where you're actually talking to consumers and drinkers that aren't as familiar with the whole idea and again, what beer can actually be. So it's a little bit of a harder sell. Whereas here, I would say people are kind of looking for, people were kind of looking for us to open before we even did. We didn't have to work to sell the product. People came to us, which is phenomenal. And, you know, we're pretty happy that we had that situation to come into, and that's mainly Wellington and Sleeman and Stonehammer before that had done that for us. So we're very grateful to them for that. But yeah, I'd say the scene here is very, very much kind of driven by local focus, and people like trying beer and drinking beer in Guelph. So how that compares to the Tri-Cities, I imagine people like drinking beer out there too. But as far as the actual intricacies, I'm not probably the best guy to ask that.
I think that's a great apt description, because you've described what Guelph is like. That's been my opinion of Guelph for a long time. It's very definitely a local driven scene.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. It helps us out quite a bit.
Katie asked an interesting question, because you and I talked about the beer scene and the craft beer scene on the East Coast. Her friend on the East Coast in the Halifax region has a hard time finding imperial stouts. He's considering starting a microbrew. So the questions she asked are very insightful.
All right.
Similar to the ones I was going to ask you, worded differently. Any tips or suggestions that might help him avoid early pitfalls? And maybe a few helpful best practices that he would benefit from.
All right. So the first thing I would say is, if you're going to brew Imperials, kind of beware of the smoked honey paradigm. Imperials are great, but are you going to be able to get enough beer out the door to appeal to a wide enough audience with that? A specialty, a niche brewery like that it's cool, and it's a really good thing as long as you got enough following to make that work. Number two is, if you're going to brew Imperials, whatever size beer brew house you put in. So if you're putting a 10 hec or 15 hec, 20 hec, whatever, get a mash tun twice the size. So if you're going to buy a 10 hec brewery, get a 20 hec mash tun. And why that is that we have, if you're especially making higher gravity beers, having the ability to extract substantially more sugar, we're limited with the gravity of our beer is limited by the amount of weight of grain that we can stick in our mash tun. When we go higher gravity than that, we lose volume. So we can't sparge. We just have to run right off. And we only yield, we have a 10 hectoliter brew house, or sorry, 10 barrel brew house.
Yep.
It's about 12 hex, 12, 13 hex. When we run off a beer over about 18. So if we're making an Imperial, or we make something really big and heavy, we're limited to yielding of only about 700 liters off of that. Just because we ultimately can't sparge that mash. So if you're making Imperials, you're making really high gravity beer, always get a bigger mash tun than your beer length.
I got that beer question again. I thought we'd do the
Moving on. Thirsty Craft.
The beer diversity one, because I want to make sure that we get that one in today.
Absolutely.
So, Andrea and Randy, they say that definitely the finish is definitely smooth after eating honey drizzled over cheddar.
Awesome.
So, the thumbs up.
Points for audience participation. I like it.
And I stand corrected. Katie didn't ask the question. Jay asked the question, not Katie.
All right. Well, the answer's still the same.
Yep, the answer's still, I know. Cameron and I had a conversation last night, and we were talking about, I forgot the name of the gentleman who used to be at Great Lakes that's now out in the East Coast.
Andrew Bartle.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and I was remarking.
At the Church Brewing in Wolfville.
Yep.
Nice guy, good guy. And yeah, they make really good beer. So if you get out to the East Coast, check out Wolfville, and go check out the Church, which is out there. Also go see Wolfville and Lightfoot, which is a vineyard right there. A very, very good friend of mine for about 2 decades anyway, is one of the assistant winemakers there. So even though we don't like to drink wine much, you should go check out what Kat's doing at the vineyard. It's really good. Highly recommend the trip to Wolfville. That's basically what I was
Yep. Totally agree. I normally would have been out there right now.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we got next one up is our community collab for July. I forget what month we're in these days. We did this one with Beer Diversity, so everyone I'm sure knows or is familiar with Ren. who has started up Beer Diversity, kind of a, as it says on the side of the can there, created and launched by Ren in 2018. Basically strives to educate, enlighten, and make beer approachable to a more diverse audience. So we chose this one because this is the most recent community collab we do. It's one kind of more like cooler things that I'm really proud of what we do with the brewery. So every month we partner up with a different local organization, either a charity or an NGO or an organization, and we do a collab brew, and then we donate 50 cents from the sale of every can back to that organization. It gives that organization or that group a little bit more, maybe a little bit more exposure or a window into a different audience than they might normally have. Not so much with Beer Diversity because Ren does beer, but some of the other groups that we work with. So we do one of these every month, and it's kind of a cool little thing that I'm really proud of what we do here. So we picked this one just so we could kind of bring that out and show you a little bit about that, and also helps Ren out a little bit more with a few more 50 cents is going to her for the work that she's doing. So yeah, this guy's a kind of a typical, I wouldn't say not typical, but it's a kind of light, very hazy IPA. A little under gravity for a true IPA, so we might call it an IPA at 6%. Generally when we do the community collabs, the groups get an input what kind of beer they want to make, and Ren was all into the Sabro hops. That's the coconut flavor in there. So she really wanted to have some Sabro in there, so we just did an IPA with that. But yeah, the overall, I think one of the pillars for our brewery, and one of the things that we really try to be conscious of pretty much all the time, is our role within our community, and that we are only successful if our community is successful, because they don't have to support us as a business and as a brewery, and being aware of that and doing whatever we can to give back wherever we can. Not just to give back, but involve as well. We really want to do that, and give groups within the community and members of our community the ability to kind of showcase what they're doing, and give kind of them a platform which to do that. I can't remember who it was, but it was one of the OCB conferences a couple of years ago. And one of the sessions there, they're saying, beer in the beer industry is really cool because it's really loud. Generally, when beer speaks, people listen. As an industry, people are interested, they're engaged with what's going on a lot of the time, and so it's a good platform and a good megaphone for other messages to be sent is through beer. And so that's kind of what we're kind of working with this program, is just passing that megaphone around. Just in general, I think that's really, because something that stuck with me a lot is that, yeah, beer's loud. People generally are interested and want to hear what it says.
Got a couple of questions I need to follow up on.
Yeah, fire away.
What are some of the other organized, oops, sorry, I got to go back up further.
Yep.
Maybe you know the answer. I have a simple one. F&M closed their doors. What happened?
You'd have to ask someone at F&M.
They basically went bankrupt.
Yeah, that's generally, I mean, that's probably why they stopped. One of the brewers at F&M was over here now, Andrew. He's been in the industry for a very long time, so he came over and started working for us pretty much right after that. It's always a bad thing when a part of the community that we have here ultimately is gone. Yeah, as far as the actual what went wrong or what went on, and that's
a loaded question that no one can answer but them.
Yeah, I think that's it. Or someone that maybe a little bit closer to it than we were. I mean, obviously, we have a pretty good community amongst the brewers here in Guelph. We have our little trade organization called Guelph.Beer, which I don't know if any of you came over for the beer buses we did last year and we're planning on doing this year, but life happened. So we all have a fairly close relationship. And yeah, it was a bit of a surprise when that did happen. It wasn't really something that we had any indication was gonna go down, and then all of a sudden, had a phone call about it. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one for me to answer, having not been directly associated with it.
I think we got as much answers we're ever going to get. Now, David wanted to know what are some of the other organizations you've partnered with in the past?
Yeah. So every year we do a big one for Wounded Warriors. That's Remembrance Red. That one goes to the LCBO. Russ, the other business partner here, the other founder of Royal City, served in the forces for 15 years, 16 years, I think he was in, and was in Afghanistan, and a bunch of, one of the organizations that he knew that really actually did a lot of good things for vets was Wounded Warriors. So we've been doing Remembrance Red as the benefit for them for 5 years now. And pretty much we were told pretty much every year the benefit of the proceeds of that campaign pretty much buy 2 service dogs for the training and pay for the service training for 2 service dogs. So that's a pretty cool thing, I think, to help out folks with PTSD. That's one. Guelph Humane Society is another one. We're kind of dog people around here. We Guelph Humane Society, we do one for every year. We do the Guelph Pipes and Drums every year. That's our 80 shilling. We've done Trout Unlimited Canada. We have done the Zonta Club of Guelph. We've done, we're looking at one with the Guelph Little Theater next year, I think, or shortly. Arch Guelph is going to be the next one that we release. Just off the top of my head, who are the other ones we've kind of worked with? That's all I'm getting off the top of my head, but
That's okay.
Yeah.
You work closely with a lot of local organizations, which goes back to that fundamental question or statement you said. You believe in supporting community because you need community.
Yeah, absolutely. And, no one has to drink our beer. So people want to drink the beer because A, they like it, and B, they like the company they're buying it from. And I think that's a responsibility on us to try and to play the other part of that role.
Yeah.
The other part of the side of that equation, rather.
Yeah. Now we're going to switch over to the labels because I missed a question earlier on.
All right.
Is there an inspiration for the label design? Because according to Derek, they remind him of Settlers of Catan.
You'd be surprised, actually. There are several people who have made their own Catan boards out of labels. So they grab some stickers and lay them down on their desks or their top. No, as far as Catan was not the direct reference from which we pulled this. So all of our art is done by Kai Sapoulis in Guelph, who's a Guelph artist. She now runs Took magazine. So Took is the
Fantastic magazine.
Cities as well. So she's the artist that does all the layout and the graphics for Took. But very early days, we were kind of like, our idea was for the breweries, we wanted it to be Guelph's brewery. We wanted it to be the brewery that was tied to this city. And we're trying to figure out what's that look like? Who's our artist? Right? What's the theme? How's that go? And I was sitting at my house, and I had that like Art in the Street in Guelph a couple of years earlier. I'd bought a couple of prints of like downtown Guelph buildings, and I looked over and I was like, oh, I thought that looked really cool, so I bought it and I hung it on the wall for 2 years. And I looked over and I'm like, well, who drew that? And I was like, oh, it's Kai Sapoulis. No, give her a shout and see how that goes. And so yeah, we're 7 years later, and Kai does all of our art. So typically with the art, sometimes we give her an idea. Sometimes she just comes up with something. But yeah, she does really, really good stuff. I think she's one of the best graphic designers in beer, at the very least, if not beyond. Her art is fantastic, and we've been, it's kind of defined what our brewery looks like, and I think she's done a really good job with consistency across everything that we do. I think it's fairly recognizable what comes from us just based on how it looks, let alone how it tastes, but just look at the cans. I think it's fairly consistent. I was really excited actually when we got our third next beer exhibition into the LCBO, and we could actually have a lineup of those finally outside of the brewery, and have a lineup of those beers on a shelf, and we'll kind of let people see that consistency across all the brands and what the actual overall brand kind of looks like. So we're pretty pretty stoked when that actually happened. But yeah, I think some of it comes from us, some of it comes from her, but all the design comes from her. Some of the ideas, that is. But no, it is very applicable to Catan, but unfortunately, it wasn't born.
The hexagons, I guess, make me think of Catan is really what it comes to. But they look quite striking side by side when you have a bunch of them, and especially the borrowed time. I think that one looks really, really nice.
Yeah, that could be grained in Catan pretty easily, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, very, very cool. Whose idea was the hexagons? Was that just?
That was Kai.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So
Keep that together. Yeah.
Thank you. That's fantastic. And we have a comment from Chris. It's a little off topic, but his dad really wanted to compliment you on your boxes because they've been getting home delivery, and he's impressed. And the last cut, also no plastic. Thanks.
Yeah, we that's one of the things. One of our shipping agents really hates us for that. But yeah, we try to we deliberately don't shrink wrap the cases of our cases of beer, and we try to keep everything that we're sending as much as possible, some of the packaging materials down. So we generally just put a little cardboard toppers over our cases, which help a little bit of rigidity when they're shipping. But yeah, well, thanks for that. We generally it's deliberate. Let's put it that way. There are a lot of guys our shipping, like Cold House, who does our shipping in Toronto, really doesn't like the fact that our cases aren't wrapped in shrink wrap. But yeah, it's definitely a deliberate thing. But thanks for that.
We're getting really close to an hour. I hope you have a little more time for us.
I'm done. All I got left on my calendar today is this. So hey, I'm good.
So I have a couple of questions left that I haven't asked.
All right. Do you want to open the next beer first, or?
Absolutely. We can go to the next beer.
I just don't want people getting thirsty. That's all.
My memory serves me right. Exhibition IPA was the first IPA that Kickoff got from you.
All right. That would have been probably like 2016, 2015, late 2015, early 2016.
Yeah, about that time frame, yeah.
It has completely, another one of those examples of a beer that's completely come about 180 degrees from where it was.
I was just thinking that this is not the same that I remember. So
this guy's probably one of the beers that so there's two beers at Royal City that I personally am the happiest with and most proud of. And it's this one, and it's our Oktoberfest. Again, I spent a lot of time living in southern Germany, and I really like Märzen. So our Oktoberfest is really good. I'm really happy with that, and this one. And why I'm again back to the original kind of comment there, that we don't. When we first started, it was like, we're not going to make IPAs because everyone does, and then we kind of realized that that's really wrong, and I should not be telling people what they want to drink. So we started making IPA, and it wasn't very good. I'm happy to say that. And we tinkered around with it a lot. We started making it a little better, and and I thought it was okay. And then it would have been in 2018. I was out at a local establishment here, and I had a pint of it that was on draft. Excuse me. And it was awful. I was ruined my whole night. I was so mad the whole rest of the night. And I obviously we know the bar managers at all these places. I'm like, get out of my way! I'm going to the cellar. I'm looking. Is this a 12-month-old keg? No, it's not. It's a 2-week-old keg. Okay, so this is entirely on us. And so yeah, I was like, this is not good enough. And we came back to the brewery, and we sat down, and we all kind of had a big dive into how we make this beer and how this beer works. And we kind of did that thing where we just completely took it apart, and we looked at basically how we process this beer. And we changed a lot of things and made a lot more, basically paid a lot more attention to how we were brewing this beer. IPAs can be incredibly fickle or they're incredibly susceptible to oxygen pickup. And the oxygen that's comes through can intrude in various places in the process and in packaging, can lead to spoilage incredibly quickly. And that was what the problem was with exhibition. The main one anyway was that it was spoiling. The hops are going cheesy. They're getting oxidized pretty quickly in it. And so we basically had a real deep dive into how we make beer. And the changes that came from that kind of examination made everything better at the brewery. I think all of our beer better, but this one in particular. And we this beer won the gold for Session IPA in Canada last year. And from about a year apart from this is awful to we won a gold for this. I'm pretty happy and pretty proud of this beer. So Session IPA, not terribly overly bitter. It's a little bit of bitterness, but it's got a fairly nice, refreshing hop character on the front end. Again, it's something you can kind of slam back all day. It's a slightly up tempo lawnmower beer. But kind of the story about how this is a lot of teamwork and a lot of the guys at the brewery. None of us were really happy with how this was and how can we make it better. And so everyone kind of sat down and figured it out. And it's not only enough to say like, hey, this is the process we have to do, but you need the buy-in from everyone who's actually doing it. Because ultimately, if we say this is how it's supposed to be, but none of the guys are doing that, it's not going to get any better. But we're pretty fortunate with the crew that we have here right now that, it's a little bit more work to do it the way we do it now. But everyone was like, this is substantially better doing it this way. And so having that buy-in from the whole gang was pretty instrumental in turning this beer around and creating what I think I'm pretty happy with. So if I'm drinking Royal City beer, this is probably the main one that I'm drinking now is X.
That's good. You guys celebrated 6 years in June.
We did.
If you could go back in time, what would be the one thing you would tell your younger self?
It's going to be hard, but that's okay. I guess would be the thing. I think when we started this, there's a whole lot of arrogance in that. We can do it. We'll make it work. Whatever. How hard can it be? It's really hard, but that's okay. There are certainly good days and there are certainly bad days, and that's also okay. But at the end of the day, we make beer for a living, and that's kind of awesome. So even when things are not going well, which, in the last, we're talking a little bit about what's been happening with Ed there early on about what's been happening kind of as a result of the world right now and the COVID pandemic. Things are tough. We're getting ground down right now. It's a lot of work and a lot of stuff's ongoing, but that's okay. At the end of the day, we can kind of say we work really hard and things aren't always ideal right now, but we make beer and that's kind of awesome. So as bad as the day gets, it's still not that bad. There's people in a lot worse situations than we are for sure. So trying to keep that kind of grounding in that, this isn't easy. The arrogance is going to bite you in the ass from 2013 for sure. But that's okay. I think that's kind of thing. The other thing would be the irony of the fact that you start a brewery because you love making beer, but it turns out pretty quickly that the easiest piece of that puzzle to delegate to other people on your team is the actual making of the beer. It's everything else that's a little bit harder to pass or to have other folks do. So I started a brewery because I love making beer and I love that process. And now I don't really get to do that anymore. But that's okay too. I still make beer sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So that's what I would tell myself 6 years ago. It's going to be harder than you think, and you're not going to get to brew.
That's great. Did I get it wrong? Was it 2013, not 2014?
No, we officially started selling in 2014. We started building the place.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
I get my dates kind of from the beer kind of drinking public's standpoint, it's 2014, but from Cam up,
Because Derek points out that the can says 2013.
it does. Yeah, we officially incorporated in 2013, and
okay.
we didn't catch that one until it had already been on a lot of things. So that's
fine. I just wanted to make sure I hadn't got it wrong.
No, we opened the door in 2014, but we were swinging hammers and putting tanks in 2013.
Yeah. Okay, one last question for you.
Yeah, fire away.
If you could have us all leave this chat tonight with one thought, what would it be?
I wrote a couple of potential answers down here, and I'm just going to see which one I go with. Basically, my kind of thing is, I think beer is really cool. And to me, it doesn't really matter what's in your glass, what you're drinking, as long as you enjoy it, and B, you're willing to try other things. So if you like what you drink, then that's fantastic. Keep drinking it, and that's great. And they say the best beer you can have is the one that's in your glass right now. So I think that's really it.
Okay. Haven't decided if I'm going to ban Chirag now, but he just wrote nerd.
Yeah, guilty. That's all right.
No, I get where he's coming from with it.
But yeah, I mean, we're really fortunate to do what we do and to be a part of the community that we are a part of, and not just Guelph and the local community, but all y'all as well. You're sitting here on a Tuesday night at 9 o'clock listening to some bald dude in Guelph talk about beer, and you're all into that, and that's awesome. That's what I really like about it. It's something that just brings out interest in people and engagement, and
Cam,
and taste it too. So.
Yeah, I want to thank you for joining us tonight.
Now, thank you so much.
Fantastic.
It's, really glad to have the opportunity.
And remind everybody that next week Sam from Sada City is going to be on, and
that'll be a good one. We got that for that.
And if according to the way I read, be able to order online to get delivery, Thursday morning will be your last opportunity to ensure that the beer gets here by Tuesday. So, but I look forward to having Sam on. He's a well-known character in the whole craft beer industry.
He sure is. He'll be good value for money. That's for sure.
Absolutely. But again, once again, Cam, appreciate the time that you spent with us and the insights that you've given us. It's wonderful to hear your story. So thank you. I'm going to stop recording now. Those of you who want to stick around and socialize, by all means, please stick around and socialize.